Hey everybody, this is Cody Knight 22 here, and I'm coming at you today with episode 3 of Cody Talks Fanfiction. And before I want to get this thing going, I would like to lead off with a couple of things. First things first, thank you to the wonderful Mr. Scott McKilveen for making this awesome intro. The link to his Twitter will be in the description below. Because he has asked that I don't link his fanfiction profile because he doesn't ever use it for anything but following stories. And then also, I would like to also lead this off by saying that this is the 4th time now that I've had to record this. The first time I didn't like the theme, or the theme didn't work quite as well as I hoped that it would. The second time around, I screwed up some things while recording it, and therefore it wouldn't work. Third time around, the audio file got corrupted. So here we go, 4th time's the charm. So I'll be in a bit of a different place than I was last time. But today, I'm really excited about this theme, about the theme to this episode. I'm also really excited because this is going to be the first video, or it might be the second video, I don't know when I'll have that montage done, probably never, that I will have edited with Video Editor Pro. As you can see, this is all I have left. Whoops. This will be one of the first things that I have edited with Video Editor Pro. To lead us off, first off I need to make myself a little bit of tools, some cheeky little tools. I would like to say I lost 2.5 stacks of iron and I think like a stack of gold, along with my diamond pickaxe. So winter hit me hard. The Starks warned me. I wasn't prepared. I lose my bucket of water as well. God damn it! All right. Well, that's enough about gameplay for this episode, I think. Because nobody's here for gameplay, right? Who watches a Minecraft video because they like the gameplay. I mean, let's be realistic here. So I think that we should lead off this video first by me explaining to you what the theme of this week's episode is. The theme is the Twisted, the dark and twisted world of RWBY, and because of the name of the theme, I have to just do that. I have to mention the song. You got it twisted. Oh no, no, tell me why you wanna do me that way. Okay, that's all the singing you're gonna get from me in this video. So, apologies, but you know I've got a lovely voice. I'm kidding. I really don't, but whatever. I wanted to do that, so y'all have to suffer. But now that's enough with singing. That's enough with non-gameplay discussion. Or non-gameplay discussion. That's no. I think that I have a good amount of non-gameplay discussion. But so the world of the Twisted, basically, it's anything that's darker and it's anything that is a little bit different than what RWBY is, and the world of RWBY is. So it's alternate universe, dark theme this week, and I really like this theme. Dark and Twisted is kind of where I consider myself most comfortable as a writer. Just because that's kind of how I got started, is that in the 7th grade we had to write a short story for a class, and I wrote the short story, and I wrote the short story based off of the theme that they gave me, and I went ahead and was going to make it a comedy story, and then after a little bit I realized that I kind of set myself up for something besides comedy, and I decided to write something besides comedy. So I wrote about death, the character of death, the narrative of death, which in and of itself is a very dark character. And I kind of put my own spin on that idea, on this concept of death being a person, or death being a character, not necessarily a person. So the world of the Dark and Twisted is kind of, I feel very comfortable in this genre, in this realm. And I enjoy reading it. I think that reading about the Dark and the Twisted is kind of fun. I think that it definitely with the RWBY universe, because RWBY in and of herself is so pure. It makes things very, very interesting and very, very unique. Just to kind of see what the authors do with that particular character and with the characters around her is how do they change. So I really enjoy it. So this is going to be a 3-story episode. Now that I've finished explaining what this is going to be a 3-episode or 3-story long episode. My apologies. And so let's get things going with the first story. The first story is going to be one of an older favorite of mine. It is going to be Blood Rose by RWBY Lemons. And so, something else that I'm going to do differently in the episodes from here on out, is going to be I'm going to talk about the I'm going to be discussing the I'm going to read the description. There we go. Good God, that was way too hard. I'm going to be reading the description, and so the description for Blood Rose is a darker, more twisted version of RWBY, that's RUBY, a version that lusts for power and control and violence and is nearly soulless. Heartbreak at every turn contains lots of plot and damn it, I can never say this word. Gratitude. The word will be on the screen because I literally can't pronounce this word for the life of me. And something that starts with a G, violence. I try to update every day. Updated chapter 56, interrogation. Fun fact, that description, not updated. That story, not updated for a very long time. But, we'll forgive him, sort of. So it's 58 chapters long. So basically, that's the description of the story. And something that I have found to be true, descriptions very rarely reveal anything about plot. So I will be giving the general summaries of the plot. Basically, RWBY is a psychopathic, cannibalistic serial killer. A little bit different than the RWBY that we know. Son of a bitch, I went in a circle. A little bit different than the RWBY that we know and love. And she targets Faunus, and I can't really reveal too much without spoiling a crap load of things. So she kills Faunus primarily, and as time goes along, people find out, and it's a journey of learning more about her. And learning more about this particular version of RWBY, and it's very difficult to call her RWBY. It's not the same. It's not the same character at all. Is the fact that this is basically, it's the same. It's the same name, the same. Not even necessarily a similar physical appearance, and that's about it. Otherwise, it is completely different version of RWBY. Now, and so from there. It was kind of an evolution of this character and the people around her. The story has a lot of original characters because this is 58 chapters long. This is kind of his universe, and it's very, very difficult to write something that long without twisting it to make it your own. Make it your own universe. And so with Ruby Rose, she's fighting to kind of stay. She's fighting to stay her, maybe? I don't. She's fighting to stay, essentially, is kind of like one of the things, is that she's not fighting for justice, she's not fighting for any kind of a good cause, she's fighting to stay, no matter what, and she doesn't care, well, she cares where it is, she would prefer for it to be with her friends, but due to some circumstances, that option really is not entirely possible, and she's just fighting because she wants to stay. It's like Rihanna. And, I want you to stay. Okay. And so that's kind of like a very general summary of the plot. Like I said, there are a lot of things that happen. Shit. I thought that was going to happen. But there's a lot of things that I can't really go into detail much on. But what I will say is that, there we go. Sorry. And what I will say is that the story is very, very well done. Heartbreak at every turn is probably an understatement of the year, because that story is depressing as all hell. Not that I mind, but I mean, it's a dark story. It's a heavy read. I came in around chapter 13, I believe, is when I started reading, and it didn't get any easier from there. But I'm really glad I didn't one sitting 58 chapters, because I don't think I would have. But God damn it, I don't think I would have been able to. Oh, hey, look. So definitely a dark. Oh, fuck. I'm sorry, I'm getting really distracted here. But it definitely is a darker story. It definitely is harder to stomach in certain areas. There's fairly graphic, violent scenes in there. So it's definitely, there are some things to it that are kind of difficult, but I think that overall it's worthwhile. I think that some pros to this story. First off, I probably should say this: combat in that story feels very fluid. It's very, very easy to read, very, very easy to picture, which is a good thing in pretty much every single circumstance. But it's also kind of like a bad thing if you're squeamish, because there's a lot of things that go on in that story that are a little bit heavier. And so I feel like I went this way probably, but so they have that's a pro to it, is that the combat in the story feels very fluid. And then another pro to this story is the way that he goes about insanity, because this is not split personality RWBY, or like of any kind, or like a somewhat pure RWBY. This RWBY is insane. Like there's no, make no mistake about it. I'm just gonna keep running in circles if that's okay with everybody. There is no, make no mistake about it, is that this RWBY is completely insane. She's gone mentally, and she is not at all the same RWBY that we love in the show. And you still find reasons to love her because it is RWBY and because of namesake. And there are glimpses of that RWBY that we love, but not a whole lot to really kind of sustain the character if it was just that RWBY. Another pro to this story is the plot, really. I think that this is a very intricate plot line, and unfortunately we ended right in the middle of an arc, one of the arcs to the story. And I don't believe that the author, I mean, the story's not complete yet, but I don't believe that Lemons will be continuing on with the story. I think that this story is unfortunately finished, and so there are a lot of questions that I will not have answered, like will everything be happy for anybody in this story? Though I believe I know the answer to that question already, just based off the prior 58 chapters that he had written. And so then there's another pro to the story. Sorry, I don't know why I paused there. Another pro to the story is the feels. There's lots of feels in this story, and it definitely is heartbreaking more often than not. And it's kind of like, it's one of those things where you really don't want to read anymore, because you're like, okay, I'm kind of done with this story. Like, I'm done. I want to go lie down and cry, but I have to finish this. Like, I have to know. It's pretty heavy. So that's really kind of like the pros to the story. Some cons. There was one sequence in the story that bothered me. And it was a sequence where you meet a character fairly early on, Alice. Some things happen, and then RWBY is elsewhere, and Alice is there, and it revisits Alice, and it was just like a little bit of a 6-chapter thing. It felt very out of place. That sequence. It felt as though it didn't belong with the rest of the story, and it felt as though it was just stalling for the rest of the story to be figured out. So that was disappointing. Was just kind of like, I mean, okay, but I don't really want to read this. I want to learn more about RWBY, because you made me emotionally care for this character, but only in the sense of RWBY. Now it's just kind of like, I'm done with this character. I want to read more about RWBY, and it did feel like stalling. The other complaint is probably the biggest complaint that I think that the general population has, is RWBY doesn't die. She gets autopsied on, and she doesn't die. And so, I mean, that's kind of a bit absurd. That's like Wolverine level super healing. So that part was kind of like, you see, it's already hard to emotionally care for this kind of a character, just because she's so twisted, she's so mentally screwed up. And now you're going to go ahead and make it hard to mentally worry for this character. Now you're going to take away the element of physically worrying about this character, worrying about her physical well-being. Okay, that's, if you want to. I guess so. I'll still read it. I read it and I loved it. I love the story. It's that some stories I may say have more cons than others, but that really does not change the level of enjoyability that I have for that story. It's the fact that there are some stories that I've read through and I've found very little issues, but I'm like, I didn't enjoy it as much. So this story, it does have cons to it. It is not perfect, but I thought it was one of the more enjoyable stories that I have ever read. It actually was my favorite story on the website until October Storm. So I mean that's a pretty long time considering I read October Storm what 2 week like a week and a half ago. Um, no, not even. Yeah, no, a week and a half ago. Never mind. I forgot that. I forgot that this thing does not come out for this thing is recorded generally well in advance, unless I lose all my audio. And so definitely there's some pros and those are some cons to the story. I think that overall though that this story is incredibly enjoyable. I think that it's beautifully done. It's beautiful in the ugliest kind of a way. And I definitely think that everybody should go read it. It's my recommendation for the video. I'll tell you that right now. And I think that it it was my favorite story for a long time. It's one of my favorite stories still. But everybody go read it. So now, that'll do it for Blood Rose. So you'll see a slight pause for me to reset, and then I will begin story numero dos. Alright, the second story that I'm going to be talking about is going to be another one of my personal favorite stories. Actually, I've kind of hit two of the top three stories here. Coincidentally, 2 and 3. White Rose. This is going to be the White Rose of Vermilion by Kuribayashi. Correct me if I'm saying that wrong. Kuribayashi, because I will be PMing this to you. The summary is AU, where Ruby spends her days as a huntress, hunting wild game to support herself and her older sister Yang, a blacksmith. They live humble lives until one pivotal decision drags them and the ones they love into a deadly game of shadows where the grim aren't the only enemies. Their actions will determine whether history remembers them as legends or unnamed casualties of war. I'm going to go ahead and just... I mean, we're not there yet. I'm going to speculate, though. I'm going to say that A is going to happen because, I mean, if it's just B, just go ahead and just get killed. I mean, that wouldn't be much of an ending to the story. So this story, that description is probably the most general description that you could give about this story. I mean, I give general summaries, but man, that is impressively general. So basically, Ruby and Yang live together. They don't have any parents. Yang took up blacksmithing as a trade. Ruby took up being a huntress to help support her sister, so that way they could pay for their house. Ren and Cardin are butchers. Oh my god, I'm blanking. I'm blanking really hard on the names right now. What are their... Oh, Blake is a book... Jesus Christ. Blake is works as a bookbinder. Nora is a baker. Weiss is the daughter of Warden Schnee. And Pyrrha and Jean are Pyrrha is the commander of the something... What? No, I have this up here. Why not? But Pyrrha is commander of the... he's kind of like the village guard, or commander of the village guard or something. I literally can't remember the name. I don't want to find it right now. I'll put it on the screen right now. Jean is a part of that. Pierre is the commander of that, and that's kind of what they all do. As far as how does it affect them, is that it kind of really does change things. My guess is, judging by the name, White Rose of Vermilion, my guess is that there will be White Rose in the story. I'm making a very wild assumption. We actually don't know yet, so it could very well be that this guy just was like, or girl. I got crap for that from Angel Dancing on a Pin. Angel Dancing on a Pin, by the way, totally not a dude. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Whew. But Angel Dancing on a Pin, totally not a dude. So my apologies to you if you actually watched any other video in this series. So this affects their professions, obviously, but it also affects kind of who they are. Ruby is still very sweet and innocent, but she still possesses that quality that makes her fine to kill, which is very interesting because that's very much so how the Ruby is in the show. It is very much so that she is sweet and innocent and very pure, but she kind of is ready to kill. Yang is a blacksmith. You don't really know a whole lot about Yang, which is kind of fitting because it's also how it is in the show. Blake you really don't know a whole lot about. Weiss, is kind of like, man, let me tell you, so this is a pro. This is a pro to the story before I say this. I'd finally gotten around to liking Weiss. And just through writing and reading about her, and I finally got around to accepting the fact. This story, right back to square one, right back to hating Square, because God, Weiss is awful in this story. She's a terrible, terrible person. But that is a pro. And it's kind of like a Game of Thrones-esque AU. It feels like Game of Thrones meets RWBY. Grimm, I haven't actually seen. I don't think we've seen a Grimm in this story yet. But basically, there are two murders. Kind of the conflict of the story is that there are two murders that occur, and one of them is Landlord Thrush, who is a very vile man and sleeps with people that can't pay their rent. And then there is a minor that did get named, whose name I do not remember. And he is killed for knowledge of the fact that there were people that were trying to short circuit Yang's blacksmithing business for some reason. You don't know the reason yet either. So that's the conflict to the story. The other real conflict to the story is the fact that Weiss takes it upon herself to make arrests for a show of force of these two murders, and she arrests RWBY and Yang on suspicion for them because Thrush was her landlord. She was behind on payments, and she did have to occasionally sleep with him. So that's the general kind of summary for the story. And this is another really remarkable story. Is the fact that the three stories here are for not being biased towards or being biased towards one of them, I guess a little bit. That bias generally makes me pretty unbiased, but that bias towards the stories are pretty much. What's that noise? Oh, that's sorry. There was something making a noise in my room. I was really confused. But it makes. I lost my train of thought. Damn it! I really apologize to Kuribayashi. Every time I record this, it always seems to be your story. My apologies. I feel really bad. But with Kuribayashi, he or she writes this kind of story in such a way that it makes there aren't a whole lot of, you actually have protagonists of the story, but it makes even the despicable characters enough to a point where you can care about them in some way, whether or not it be positive or negative, but where you can kind of care about them in one way. And Weiss feels very misunderstood, but at the same time she's doing these things that's like, I can't find reasons to understand her. So that's a big pro to the story. Another pro is the beautiful marriage of this kind of like medieval Game of Thrones-esque world along with the RWBY universe, and I think that it's done phenomenally. Is that if this is like the promise of the Game of Thrones universe and RWBY together, I'm really looking forward to the future of this AU style. And so that's another big pro to it, is just kind of the marriage of these two different universes. And another pro to this story is definitely the intrigue of it. Is the fact that you don't know what's going on at all. You really don't. I mean, you kind of know exactly as much as the author is plainly stating. Otherwise, it's all a mystery. This is interesting. Otherwise, it is all a mystery to you, and I really enjoy that. A con, I do got to get to. I don't have many cons to this story, but I do have one, and that con, and it is a pretty big con, honestly. And what the con is that Yang goes over to Landlord Thrush's house, and from what we can gather, she burns him with a hot iron, and it makes it sound like she was the one that murdered Thrush. And then it comes off, and it even sounds like it afterwards. But after she's been arrested, not telling it to other people, but with internal dialogue with Yang, it makes it sound as though she's innocent, and that she truly believes that she's innocent, and that she did not, and not that her crimes weren't, and it's not that her crimes were justified, but that she didn't even commit them. I don't know what's going on. And that's not saying it in a good way. Is the fact that in this instance, this is internal dialogue. I should be able to tell whether or not Yang did commit the crime or whether or not Yang did not. And unfortunately, in this instance, I can't tell. It's a complete and total mystery, and it's not a good thing. I want to be able to know whether or not Yang internally is struggling with either the fact that she did kill him or that she did not. Not even knowing that whether or not Yang did it. It's implied heavily that she does, but then as of late, it's like, oh, I didn't do it. Oh, I didn't do it. Oh, I didn't do it. And not saying it to other people, saying it to herself, and it doesn't feel like denial. It doesn't feel like denial. It feels like an error. It feels like an error in what the author has done, and it feels honest. It feels like a big error as well. And that was weird. And I love this story, but God, this one part it's hard. It's hard to read because it's like I don't know what's going on, and I feel as though you're making your mistake here somewhere. And I would really, really love to know whether or not you're what it is that you're trying to convey here. And so okay, buddy, can you throw us a bone here? Can you at least make some sense? And it's not mystery, it's confusion. It's not, oh man, I can't wait to see what happens next. It's, I don't know what's going on now. I mean, there's some things are happening, but I don't actually really know what's going on here. So that's like the one big thing, and it's infuriating, and honestly it is, because as a reader I want to read and think the author knows precisely what the author is doing. And in this instance, it's reading it and I feel as though the author does not know. I feel as though Kuribayashi does not know what they are doing in this one, and that's the only time really in this story that I feel that way. And it is, once again, it's disappointing and it's infuriating to kind of just read along and be like, kind of screwed the pooch here. So, I mean, that being said, I forgot to give a rating for Blood Rose. But, so, whoops. But, that being said, it's still a pretty phenomenal story. And the story is still great. So, overall, I would give this story a 9.7 or 9.8 out of 10, and I would give Blood Rose, because I never did that, a 9. This story I would give a 9.7. Blood Rose I would give a 9.8. Because I love both of these stories, and if it wasn't for that one tiny error though, that may have made White Rose of Vermilion my favorite story, because that story was phenomenal, but that one thing is kind of kills it. It kills a lot of the atmosphere that the author is trying to convey here, and it's like I'm so close to perfection, and yet so far, because this is such a huge error. And whether or not it winds up being that Yang did or did not do it, that won't change the way I feel about this particular scene. Is that I don't know what's going on, and that won't change with whether or not Yang comes forward, or whether or not it comes out that Yang did do this, or whether or not it comes out that Yang did not do this. So, nothing's perfect, and this is a pretty decently sized blunder. But overall, once again, I would give this story 9.7 out of 10. I think that this one blunder is not enough to really kind of detract from it too much. And you may disagree with me. Is the fact that and this is the other thing. The other thing with reviewing is that some people may disagree with me. They may think that the story is just fine, and they may think that this is not an error. But But honestly, if the way it reads it does sound like an error. So that'll do it for White Rose of Vermilion. So now, did it return to the surface? No. So that'll do it for that story. And so now, reset and start on a new one. Start on the third and final story for this episode. On to the final story, and this is going to be one of my own stories. It's the only real dark and twisted story that I have that is any good. Unless you want to go ahead and count The Masked Killer, and in which case, why do you think that story is good? Because it's utter shit. It really is terrible. So, so this story is going to be two sides to a coin, and this is going to be Cody's Pro Writing Tips. Don't Don't ask me what that was. I generally don't know. Alright, sorry about that. That was a little bit strange. Anyways, so for this one, this is going to be about on two sides to a coin. So this is going to obviously be about darker and twisted, more twisted things. Ruby Rose is not the sweet girl that you may know. Her past is dominated by one incident, and it now rules her future. To help her in concealing this, she now wears a half mask and gloves. But will going to Beacon ruin her cover, and will she be able to control both sides of her coin? Rated M for darkness and gore, AU. I really love this story. This is like I will be, like I said, I will be the first person to tell you that my stories are not good out of everybody, as I will always be the first one to jump at that opportunity. But in this particular instance, I actually really like the story that I have done, and it's a rare moment where I actually like this story more, as much, if not more, than the general population, is the fact that I've done my best writing in the most recent chapters. I'm going to keep tooting my own horn because I'm an egomaniacal asshole. But so basically, so that's the kind of like the general overview of it, and it's really not much more to it actually than that. For the general plot is that Ruby has a half mask and she has gloves, and I just now revealed why she wears those two things in the most recent chapter, so everybody go and give that to read. And Ruby wears the half mask, she wears the gloves, and people are afraid of her because she possesses an unbelievable amount of strength, and she possesses really just a desire to kill, except it's not really Ruby that's desiring to kill. It's something else, and that may or may not relate to why she wears the half mask and gloves. But no, and so this story though, so my tips really for writing a darker story, for making it a darker and more twisted story, the first thing is don't overdo it, because that's what I did the first time I tried something like this when I did The Masked Killer. Don't overdo it no matter what, because if you overdo it, then you're gonna be out of luck, and it's gonna be bad. Really, really bad. And so what you want to do is you want to make sure that subtlety is very, very important, and make sure to kind of play off of things, play off the subtlety of certain things, and you want to, and you're going to want to hit things. You're going to want to hit points that are going to touch people, and that are going to get within somebody's mind. Targeting characters, targeting specific characters, targeting them in certain ways, and that's always very, very useful. Another thing that you want to do regarding a darker story is, and this is going to seem like a very strange tip. Introduce some kind of a lust element to it, whether or not it be sexual or just plain romantic lust. Add lust of some kind, because there is no emotion that can go more wrong than love or lust. Those two things can lead people, have driven people to do some very insane things, and they have definitely led people to a point where they do some things that are very, very stupid. And as is kind of always the case. But you want to introduce kind of this element, this lust element to it, so that you can, so this way you can play more to the emotions of these characters, and that, you know, you can make something very, very dark very, very quickly by introducing the emotions of things. And you're going to want to, oh, hey, look at this. And so, you know, I said play off emotions. If you introduce some kind of a love element to things, it'll definitely work. Make sure that no matter what, though, that love element is not anything too sweet or cutesy, because if you do it that way, then nobody's really gonna buy into it. Crap. But so that's kind of like my other tip. The final tip is that if you're gonna make things twisted, and you're gonna go for the gore element to things that kind of like plays along with it, the repetition of gore is good. It's a good thing to have. but using gore to a point of where it's basically just happening all the time, and it's pure, and every time it happens it's something vile and it's something really, really, really grotesque. And then people are just going to lose interest, and they're just going to be like, oh, okay, well, this is stupid. Okay, all right, you want to keep, I mean, if you keep cutting off characters' heads and having it mean something, then all for it. But if you're going to kill off characters just for the sake of it, just for being able to say I murdered this guy, then nobody's going to care. At the end of the day, nobody's going to care. I think I've killed off a couple of things pointlessly, but most everything that I've killed off in that story has served a purpose beyond death. And I intend to keep it that way. I intend to not senselessly kill off people just because I can. And definitely though with but you want to kill off characters, but you don't want to overdo it, and that's a pretty big piece of advice. And I would say it's actually a very good piece of advice, is the fact that you can't kill things, and this is just kind of goes for every story. You can't kill things because you just want to kill. You can't just kill. You can't kill everything. You can't, because if you do, then nobody's gonna give two fucks whether or not somebody dies. Like, oh, okay, they're dead. You know, Game of Thrones. I'm going to point to Game of Thrones, actually, for reference, or Walking Dead. A lot of people die in those shows. Every single time somebody dies, though, it's meaningful. It's meaningful in some way. And so that's what you want to do, is you want to kill off people in the most meaningful ways that you possibly can. And in the world of the Twisted, that makes things all the more better. Because if you kill off a character that served one chapter purpose, but you make it as meaningful as you possibly can, that character is going to stick with people a lot longer than they normally would. And that's really kind of like the big tips here for the world of the Dark and Twisted. Otherwise, in terms of commenting on my own story, I think that this is a fantastic story. This actually is one of the stories that I've written, and I have thought of it as one of my personal favorite stories, and that's rare. I really, really love this story though. And so otherwise, I say go at it and go read all 3 of these stories. And that's actually going to do it for this video. It's not terribly long, but I think that the length suits it well for what it was. Really kind of 2 stories and then some tips. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, go read these stories above all else, and enjoy.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching my video. I really enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed editing it and Final Cut as well. But I'm sure you're wondering, what is this doing here? Why is this at the end of the video? And why is this in black and white? Why it's in black and white because I thought it looked fancy. That's literally the only reason. This is here though because I'm looking for a potential for future episode 3. 3 people. Wow, getting in for camera was harder than I thought it would be. 3 people to do a roundtable episode in which I would be the host of it, and I would just shoot you stories, ask for opinions and whatnot on it. The requirements for this are, you must have Minecraft for the Xbox 360 and Xbox Live, obviously. You must have the ability to download the free audio recording software of Audacity. I don't necessarily need video as well. If you could record video, that'd be fine. You would have to have, and also this last one is kind of iffy. Kind of more iffy on. You must be an author. You must be a well-respected author of some kind on the website, and you must be willing to read in on this. If you're a well-known reader, though, if you're a well-known critical reader, like I can think of a couple of people, but if you're a well-known critical reader, I might accept you as well. But if I can get 3 well-respected authors, that is highly preferable in this situation. You also, obviously, you must have read 3 stories. This would be 3 stories to just kind of get some general opinions on. The 3 stories are Icy Rose, Blood Rose, and 2 sides to a coin. So I'm really kind of branching out here stylistically of just these stories, and I would be very intrigued just to kind of get an episode like this out there. So if anybody here is willing to do that, that would be really cool. Shoot me either a private message on fanfiction.net, either a direct message on Twitter, or any other message that you can think of in terms of a private messaging system. That would be appreciated, and I hope somebody here responds to this request. Thank you.